Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers, and thank you for joining me for just a few short minutes this evening. As you know, our broadcasts are aired every Wednesday night at 6:30 p.m. But tonight I had to come on to address two very, very critical issues that I had been discussing on the national airwaves all day, and even in some instances late last night. I want to talk a little bit about what's going on with Russia and Ukraine and how it may very well impact all of us who live in this country. I made it very clear today on a national TV broadcast that Joe Biden, having this meeting with Vladimir Putin and telling the American people that he kind of put it to Putin that he shouldn't cross that red line, meaning he should not invade Ukraine. Folks, if Joe Biden believes that he could look at the former director of the Soviet KGB and even think about trying to put him in his place, then Joe Biden really has a problem. We know he has problems to begin with, but I mean, really has a serious problem with regard to his assessment of Vladimir Putin. Now, I said today on the air on national TV that Putin is not a friend. He is a dictator, folks. He is a dictator. He's managed to become president of Russia, not only for the terms that we have seen over the past few years, but it looks like he's going to be there for a very long time. Vladimir Putin cannot be bullied. He cannot be intimidated. He is a very, very tough and powerful individual. And I believe that he has prepared for this day to come. What day to come? Well, the day to launch an invasion on Ukraine. Now, the situation as I see it, and as I see it based on my conversations with a lot of war veterans, with a lot of military personnel over the past few weeks, we all kind of had a discussion with regard to what if the United States, what if Russia, Vladimir Putin decides to invade Ukraine, what's going to happen? Well, Biden says that there will be very severe consequences against Russia. Really, what are those consequences going to be? Well, he's talking about very strong sanctions. He has not, this is Biden, has not kept military action off the table. In fact, if you look at his answer to questions about that very carefully, it makes it pretty clear that he used the word now. He said now, at this point in time, there's not going to be any military commitments. Well, that little word, three-letter word now means a lot, because here's what I've assessed and what some of my colleagues have assessed, just based on the information that we see coming across our desk, that we all see on the news media, that we all read about on the internet. And I'm talking about facts. I'm talking about factual information, no theories or opinions based on non-facts. So here's what I think is going to happen. Vladimir Putin, he's been waiting a long time to make his move on Ukraine. One thing that he had to wait for is to ensure that the people of the United States would remove President Donald Trump from office. Now, look, it didn't have to be Trump in office. It could have been Reagan. It could have been any Republican in office. In this case, and at this time in the history of America, Donald Trump was in office, and he made it very clear to Vladimir Putin that you're not going to cross any lines. He made it clear to Putin. He made it clear to Rocket Man in North Korea. He made it clear to President Xi. He made it clear to every single leader on the face of the earth. That is, Donald Trump made it clear that you do not mess with the United States of America or its friends. All that has changed. All of it has changed. So now Putin understands that the United States military is weak, that the United States government is weak. And so what better time than now to invade Ukraine? He has sent 175,000 troops to the border, to the Ukrainian-Russian border. And a couple of days ago, I understand that combat tanks and other equipment are now being positioned for what? Not for display, folks, not for war games, but for an invasion. Now, that's my opinion and the opinion of other people who are involved in analyzing intelligence and information. And I've got to tell you, folks, it is chilling. It is frightening, because the United States of America now has its back against the wall as a result of Joe Biden's flawed foreign policy programs, not only here, of course, with Russia, but with China and other countries. But getting back to the point of Russia, so I believe that there's going to be an invasion, maybe. And I said this, folks, I said this about 2 weeks ago and 3 weeks ago, even up to last Wednesday, that it was, in my opinion, that if Putin decides to invade, it's going to be early next year. January, maybe February, but early next year. It'll be well before the 2022 midterm elections, and no doubt well before the next presidential election. The reason why he would do it before the 2022 midterm elections, and probably early in the year, next year, that is because he, meaning Putin himself, understands that Joe Biden may not last in office that long. I believe Joe Biden has some mental illness, and I don't say this trying to make fun at the guy. I don't want to see anybody with a mental health problem. And I say this with all sincerity. He may have some diminishing capacity to lead because of his mental status, but somewhere along the line, folks, I believe Putin has assessed that, and he's just waiting for the right time to pull the trigger, if you will, on Ukraine. Now, here's what we've run into. Joe Biden stated before his meeting with Putin that he had a discussion with NATO allies, France, England, Germany. He said he had a discussion. He never told us what the discussion was about, but Biden did say that, well, you know what? We have our alliance together. We have Ukraine's back, and our allies have our back. Folks, I don't believe one word of it. I do not believe one word of it. In addition to that, and I'll qualify why I don't believe one word of it in a minute. In addition to that, I talked to a number of people who have children, sons and daughters in the United States military. And I've talked to a number of people, particularly veterans during the Vietnam War era, what they thought about this and what they thought about U.S. troops being committed, your sons and your daughters being committed to a ground war against the Russians in Ukraine. To a person, they're opposed to it. The United States of America, folks, at this point in time, after Vietnam, has no stomach for a prolonged war on foreign soil. No stomach at all. And I tell you, folks, I'm a warrior. I'm a hawk by nature. I say if we have enemies, show them strength. And if they get out of line, maybe blow them off the face of the earth. But I also am a realist and understand that you can't commit U.S. troops to combat against a strong, well-equipped, well-trained military, namely Russia. You cannot do that. We're not going to win. The blood will be spilled all over the battlefield, and it won't be the blood of Germans. It won't be the blood of the French. It won't be the blood of the English. It will be the blood of American troops. NATO has never, ever come to our assistance by sending their men and women in first. Never happened. Never happened, folks. I don't believe that now they would decide, well, maybe before U.S. troops come in, let's take the front lines. Let's lead the charge. I'm tired of America leading the charge. In fact, I'm tired of America trying to be the policeman of the world. I believe, without any question, we should take immediate, decisive action if our national security is in danger. I don't see where our national security at all is in danger with regards to Ukraine. I really don't see it, folks. Now, saying that, Vladimir Putin, he said a couple of things a few weeks ago that were rather revealing. Number one was when Joe Biden was poking Putin in the face with some sort of threats about sanctions and retaliation against the United States. Putin actually said this, folks. He said, Joe, do you hear me? Are you listening? And after that, the tanks started to roll and the troop buildup started. Well, Joe, do you hear Putin now? Do you understand what he's trying to tell you? And then on top of that, I remember that during the Obama administration, there was a discussion about Ukraine becoming part of NATO. And from what I read at that time, that the Obama administration made it clear to Putin that they weren't going to seek at that time to admit Ukraine into NATO. So Putin stood down. He didn't go past Crimea. He stood exactly where he is today. Wasn't looking to make any advancements into Ukraine. Now with Biden in office, all of a sudden the topic of Ukraine becoming a a part of NATO surfaces. Now, I want you to think about this, folks. Putin did make sense on one issue, and he said this: would the American people like to see Russian combat troops on the Mexican-U.S. border? Those of you living in Texas, you want Russian combat troops across the river? Arizona, California, anywhere in America? Do we want Russian combat troops at our doorstep? Because that is what Putin is afraid of. He's afraid that if Ukraine becomes part of NATO, there will be U.S. combat troops right across the street from the Russian border. So I could understand to a degree what he's concerned about, but I don't understand why this is so important to Joe Biden. I don't understand why it's so important to our national security. As far as I'm concerned, folks, this is Vietnam beginning all over again. It is Afghanistan beginning all over again. We have no business in the backyard of Russia and Ukraine. We simply don't. One man's opinion, based on the experience I've had in the U.S. military, the experience I've had in reading a lot of history about these countries, and how on earth the United States finds itself somewhere, somehow, past 2 or 3 decades in a bloody war. I'll be the first. Look, I'll go and put my Navy uniform on. I'll be the first one, even at my age, and say, let's go fight. If it's for America, if it's for our national security. I see no gain, none at all. And I tell you, folks, I would dare to say that most military leaders and most of the people that understand the geopolitical makeup of that region would say the same thing. Why is it that every time a Democrat gets into office, we're being led down a dark alley where we could end up in a war with a foreign power? Think about it, folks. You just think about it. You go down the list of presidents and see who was in office when we almost were led into wars. In 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis, I remember that well. Nikita Khrushchev sending nuclear missiles to Cuba. And Kennedy almost got us into a war. And the way we got out of it was remarkable. And I won't get into that, but it was remarkable. And then we move forward now into our time. I think we owe it to our children and our grandchildren to stay out of wars unless this country, the United States of America, is in imminent danger. Now, listen to this one, folks. Hold on to your seats, because this is what could happen. Worst case scenario. Vladimir Putin, he could roll the dice and he could launch an invasion on Ukraine. What's going to happen? Remember what Biden did a month or so ago. You know, the oil line, the fuel lines, you know, the big oil pipes coming from Russia into Germany, into France, you know, Russia supplying them with fuel. Well, folks, it'll never be turned on. Russia is going to turn their energy off. So do you think Germany and France are going to send troops to fight the very people that has to feed them their energy? Thanks to Joe Biden, that's what can happen. That's number one. Number two, something beyond what I just shared with you. Now, hold on to your seats. So now you've got a scenario where Vladimir Putin decides to invade Ukraine. Bloody battle. It's a no-win for the United States. And believe me, there's no way on earth, I don't care what type of weapons we've given Ukraine, that the Ukrainian military is going to defeat Russia. Not going to happen. But now listen to this. There is another country, another factor that we have to consider. If you're President Xi of the Chinese Communist Party sitting in Beijing, watching all this unfold, all of it, folks, an invasion into Ukraine by Russia, the fact that domestically we are weak. We got criminal elements running all over the country, burning buildings, burning Christmas trees, getting let out of jail. So domestically we're weak, we're in trouble. Our foreign policy with regards to Russia is so bad that we've got the Russian leader, by the way, the former leader of the Soviet KGB, as I said earlier, ready to go into Ukraine. And now here you are, President Xi at the Chinese Communist Party headquarters in Beijing, watching all this unfold. What do you think he's going to do, folks? Think about this. What do you think he's going to do? Do you think he may now make his move on Taiwan? Now, let me share something what's going on that a lot hasn't been talked about on the news, but it's out there. Do a little research. over the past several months, the Chinese Communist Party has been conducting invasion drills on their own soil. They have been conducting drills where they have beach landings of thousands of Chinese troops invading beaches in mainland China. They're drilling, folks. They're practicing. For what? What are they practicing for? Not a show, folks. They're practicing to land those Chinese troops on Taiwan. In addition to that, the Chinese Communist Party has they built and constructed mock-ups of some of our battle fleets, our carrier fleets. You know what a mock-up is, folks? It's a scale model, I should say a live model, all right, of our ships, of our destroyers, of our submarines, of our aircraft carriers. Japanese did this in World War II. So they got these live, huge, massive ships that they built in the form of U.S. ships. They know where the fuel is. They know where the aircraft are. They know where everything is on U.S. ships. I'm sure they do. I'm sure their intelligence agency has gathered that. So now you got these mock-ups of the U.S. fleets out in the South China Sea, somewhere in the Pacific. And you know what they're doing with those folks? They're actually floating them. These are live, real live, big, giant carriers. Nobody's in them. They're mock-ups of U.S. carriers and destroyers. So here's what they're doing. They're bombing them. They're practicing with their jet fighters. They're practicing with their missiles, their anti-ship missiles, and they're destroying them. They're practicing on how to sink the United States Navy fleet in the South China Sea and other places. So what are they doing? They're preparing for war. I mean, one's got to be blind not to understand what our enemies are now doing. On top of that, it gets a little worse. And then there is some light I'll give you at the end of the tunnel. On top of that, the United States military just a few months ago was involved in retraining American troops, not to fight a war to win, but to be nice. They were training everyone about being politically correct. Don't use the word man or woman. Oh, it's not Mr., it's not sir, it may be this, it may be that. This is what our military has come to under Joe Biden and the Democrat socialists. This is what it's become. And unfortunately, what has happened is it's gotten so bad that I understand that not the Russians, but the Chinese military, I believe, have recruiting videos now of U.S. troops in a classroom learning how to be nice to the enemies, and then they just cut through how the Chinese military is going to destroy us. This is what we've come to, folks. And now we're at a point in time in my life, in your life, where we've got to take action. Again, folks, I believe time's running out. I can't read Putin's mind. I can't read President Xi of China's mind. But I know enough by studying the intelligence and information that is open source, by the way. I don't have any secret documents or anything like that coming in here, but I know where to look. And I have enough contacts and enough people that have been involved in analyzing situations like this to draw some conclusions based on the totality of information that we have. And that leads to a catastrophic war in Ukraine and maybe in the Pacific, because of the Democrats of this country, the lack of their leadership and their foolhardiness in poking their finger in the chest of the bear of Russia. Russia, folks. Vladimir Putin, he respected Donald Trump. Vladimir Putin would have respected Ronald Reagan. Vladimir Putin respects strength, not weakness. All this is going on. All of this is going on, and we have what? We have a mess in the United States. Putin even went so far as to tell Biden, don't worry about my border, the Russian border with Ukraine, when you can't control your border, the Mexican border, and the United States. I mean, so the facts are there, folks. The facts are there. So what we've got to do, we have to make it very, very clear to our elected officials that there's no way on earth that the American people are going to support a war with Russia in Ukraine. Absolutely not. If it comes to our national security in danger, that's another story. But at this point, there is absolutely no reason why we should be in combat in 2022. So we'll keep an eye on that. Let's keep an eye on it, and we'll get you information as we could. Now, the other issue I talked about on the air today, and we'll talk about this at length on Wednesday night's broadcast, the idea that the city of New York, and now Biden is thinking about this, is going to pass legislation to allow non-citizens of the United States to vote. 800,000 people who are not citizens, not U.S. citizens in the city of New York may be eligible to vote in the next election if that law is upheld in court. Non-citizens. Folks, you ever believe that you live in a day of a country where you're not a citizen and you're allowed to vote? You're going to be allowed as a non-citizen to spend my money, to have legislation passed that are not in the best interest of my country? Because if you're not a citizen of America, as far as I'm concerned, you're not American. You're not American until you raise the right hand and you pledge allegiance to this flag and to that Constitution. But you see how far we've gone? Chip away. Remember a few months ago, we started on Campaign for America talking about if they're going to chip away. They're going to go after the Second Amendment. Then they're going to go after the First Amendment. Then they're going to go after this amendment and that amendment. And they're going after every single bit of the Constitution and just chipping it away, folks. Medical mandates. My goodness. They want to tell people, and they have already, that if they don't take the jab, they're going to lose their jobs. Private sectors, folks. They're going after private sectors. And I warned people in the private sector, especially the CEOs of these companies, you're next. Then I find out today, and I'm sure you found out yesterday, that they went after the press. Remember a few weeks ago I said to the press, you guys are laughing at us. You're going to stop laughing soon because these Democrats, socialists, communists are going to come after you. So CNN, they decide to deploy, it's been reported that they've decided to deploy some of their PR people, right, to the print media, whether it be the New York Times, the Post, or whatever, asking them, all right, I'm sorry, not CNN. I apologize. CNN was one of the places that the Biden administration went to. So the Biden administration and the Democrat socialists deploy their PR people to CNN, to MSNBC, to other stations that have TV networks, to the print media. And here's what they did, folks. Check it out. This is true. They asked them to control the news a little bit, to back off on being critical of Joe Biden, to be more positive. In other words, to be a propaganda machine for the Democrat, socialist, communist sympathizers of this country. You ever believe that would happen in America? Not me, folks. We had a free press. Second Amendment went after that. First Amendment went after that. The right to life went after that. The right to worship went after that. Now the free press. So you reporters out there who think that some of us here on the right, who are conservative, whether we're moderate, in the middle, or a little bit too far to the right, well, you know what? It seems to me that everything we're saying is coming true. Everything. So if you're comfortable with that, if you're comfortable with lawlessness, if you're comfortable with criminals being released from prison early because they were good boys or good girls, if you're comfortable with people who committed crimes not even going to prison, all right, folks? Happened last night before. Some arsonist decides to burn down a Christmas tree, symbolic of freedom of religion, folks, in front of Fox News headquarters. Folks, no bail. He's out. He's out to do what, folks? And it's going on and on and on across the country. So now, here's some of the light at the end of this very dark tunnel. Just remember something. We've been down this road before. For some of you who are young and weren't around during the Reagan years, we've been through this before in our lifetime. I could go back as far as 1776, the Civil War, and say, yeah, we've all read about that. But I'm talking about in our time, living in our time. We've been through this before. Maybe not at the magnitude we are at, but believe me, we were. Ronald Reagan, he stood firm, he stood strong, he built our military, he built the economy, and he shoved it right into the nose of Mikhail Gorbachev, right into his nose. You cross the line, Miguel, there's going to be trouble, and there's going to be problems. And if there's a war, we will guarantee you who's going to win: the United States, not you. We, the people of the United States, will win, and we won. We won the Cold War, and that was the end, at least the beginning of the end of the Soviet Union, a superpower. But we had an individual in office who was strong and who was tough. So I believe that the 2022 elections is going to be so critical, it will determine the destiny of this shining city upon a hill. It will, folks. And in between that midterm election, we'll have local school board elections and city council elections. Everything in between counts. So believe me, every single election coming up, you gotta go vote. And I'm going to chew somebody out right now. Going to chew somebody out right now, folks, whether they like to hear it or not. And some of them are my friends. Don't tell American citizens not to vote. Don't tell Republicans not to vote. Don't be anchored with the past, because the enemy is watching and they want us anchored down, paralyzed, where we will do nothing. I know, and you know, numerous problems we faced in the past, numerous insurmountable problems with our elections and with all sorts of things going around the country. But to sit back and to watch the destruction of America, not only because of the aggressiveness of our enemy, but because of the surrender of some people in this country, whether they're Democrat or Republican, I don't buy that. I am not ever going to surrender this flag and my rights to anybody. So those Republican elected officials, those Republicans running for office, those Republicans, and I'll say it, folks, who are, in my view, just too extreme, extremists. I've been consistent. Extremists on both sides of the aisle is not good for anybody. The Democrats have surrendered their party to the communists, and the Republicans are next, folks. If you think that the communists and socialists of this country are not looking to destroy the only wall they have between freedom and their socialist communist agenda, which is the Republican Party of this country, then you know what? You're not watching. We are. So you hear Republicans say, don't vote. You hear someone say, well, what happened in 2020, what happened, if that's not fixed, we're not voting. That's exactly what the enemy wants. Exactly. We've got to move on. That doesn't mean we forget some of the questions we have. I want every question answered. I really do. But the one question that I will not worry about answering is whether I should go vote or not. We must stand up and vote. And I've got to tell you, again, friends of mine, I've shared with people, don't let politics get in the way of your friendships, of your family relationships. And people do. I mean, we're all passionate. We get it. Politicians come and go. And I'll tell you, most of them will give you, the American citizen, and me, I'm part of that, right? A good kick in the rear end when they get elected or reelected. Because most of them, not all of them, we got some good ones being elected, but they don't give a darn. They don't give a darn about you or me. If they did, we wouldn't be in the pickle we're in right now in this country. But we give a darn, right? We give a darn. So, folks, when you go out or you go to an event, when you hear a Republican or see them campaigning, saying, don't go vote. Don't go vote. Because if we're not going to straighten this out, why vote? Why vote? Why vote? Tell that to your kids and grandkids 20 years from now, why you should have went to vote if this flag is gone and there's another one with a hammer and sickle on it. So the point is, go vote. And for those candidates, and I've seen it over and over again, who are denigrating themselves, who are assassinating their own character by reducing the conversation to name calling, to high school level name calling and character assassination, do me a favor, hang it up. Don't even run, because you're not a credit to this country. You're not a credit to the Constitution. I'm not saying don't defend yourself. Somebody goes after you and your character, you defend yourselves, but you could certainly defend yourselves like Reagan did. You could certainly defend yourselves like Lincoln did. And I could go on and on and on, folks, about great leaders of this country and in the Republican Party that solved our problems by doing it the right way, with dignity, with honor, and with trust. Trust in themselves, trust in God, and trust in the American people. So, yeah, I wanted to come on tonight. Maybe I had to vent a little because I'm just sick and tired of this flag being attacked by every imaginable person, including the so-called president of the United States. But I also have hope. I have hope in God Almighty. I have hope in the American people. I'll tell you something. We win, folks. We always win. And why do we win? Because we're Americans. We are Americans. We don't lose. We don't surrender. We don't turn our backs on a fight. We are Americans. We win. They lose. So, folks, please keep our country in prayer. I know it's a Thursday night. Perhaps I said to you I was going to be on a few minutes. I ended up a half hour. Well, maybe what I had to say needed to be said. And I will tell you, folks, as Rita says here, well, I know she says about a handful. And I guess, Rita, I certainly said a handful of stuff. I just hope it all fits in there. But keep our nation in prayer. We're going to be fine. We're going to come out of this. We got to fight. All right. I'm not talking about a ground war in Russia. We have to fight for the soul, for the spirit of America. And when we do that, when we pray and put our faith to work, depend on the Almighty, who, by the way, is responsible through divine providence for the birth of this nation, we're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. Let's just do our duty as we know it for our children and our grandchildren. That's it, folks. God bless you. God bless America. Please share this video. I'd like you to go to Rumble if you could and push the little Rumble button. That's rumble.com. Just put Lieutenant Stephen Rogers in that search bar, and then you could subscribe to our channel there. It's free. Also, we send out intelligence reports every quarter. If you didn't get one and you haven't gotten one, go to campaign, the number 4america.com. Now, that's our website. You can find it here. I'll put it up there. There it is. So what you can do is just go to campaign4america.com. Just go to the contact bar, put in your name and email. We're not going to send you anything for donations or anything like that. I don't like doing that. But we will send you information that could help you make informed decisions about getting involved and how we save our country. Whew, that's it, folks. Thanks a lot. God bless you. Have a great weekend. We'll see you soon. Hey, it might pop in over the weekend. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers. God bless you, and God bless this great country, the United States of America, also known as the shining city upon a hill.